Welcome, everybody, to another episode of On the Range podcast with Hogg Tactical and Kelley Defense. Today is July 13th, 2021. How's it going today, Rick?
Another day, Mark. Trying to get through it. So just want to thank all the viewers, listeners out there for giving us your most precious commodity, your time. So appreciate you guys listening in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, whatever platform you're on. Don't forget to give us a review and some type of rating. I don't care if it's just a thumbs up emoji, but just help us kind of move this algorithm along and get a better reach out there.
Yeah, buddy. Today, guys, I think we have a very good show. I'm super excited about the guest. I'm a huge fan. We love all the stuff that she does on the Range podcast. Is just can't believe that we got her to give her some of her time. But we have Michelle Belanger, and she is a world-renowned psychic, media personality, author, musician, writes a lot of poetry. And she's just all over the place and just has a lot of great talents. And Michelle, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. I have to ask, though, what's the dog's name?
Duco.
Duco? Looks like a big sweetie.
Yeah, he was my retired work dog. Unfortunately, I lost him on the 5th of this month. So kind of
sorry. I am sorry.
Listen, no, do not be.
That's
all right.
That's perfect that you asked, because that's what the whole thing was about. Yeah,
exactly. And that was all Mark's doing, doing the new show art and stuff. So by all means, not bothered, because here's the thing: we want to share his story. So thanks for asking. Yeah. And now, what a great way to kick off the show. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big animal lover.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Duco was great, served his country and served his family and all of his friends very well. So, yeah, great. Thanks for asking, and really appreciate that. So I'm a huge fan, and I know that, Rick and I have talked about having you on the show, and it's so interesting to have you here because there's so many things that we want to talk about, and there's so many things that you're involved in. And just going to your website at michellebelanger.com, you can see all the things that you're into. But the first thing I want to start with is, what do you consider yourself as? Do you consider yourself as an expert in the occult, a psychic, or just someone who's an artist?
I think of myself as a writer first, and probably an occult scholar or academic second. I've got a degree in comparative religious studies with a concentration in psychology of religion, which doesn't get trotted out a whole lot. But I mean, basically, it just means I like to read a lot of books about weird stuff.
Yeah, but you also write a lot of books. Is that also about weird stuff, or is it about a lot of things?
Most of the books, if it goes bump in the night, I've probably written a book about it. So most of my titles kind of revolve around paranormal experiences or people's beliefs about the paranormal. So ghosts or demons or vampires, things like that. And a lot of it is nonfiction, although I do have a couple of fiction series. The Shadow Side series is like urban fantasy. So think like film noir, detectives, guns, femme fatales, and a little bit of magic on the side.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's a whole boatload of stuff there. But here's an interesting thing you brought up, if people believe. So what's kind of your take? What's your take on that?
I mean, I have beliefs of my own, but most of what I end up studying is like what other people believe and why they believe those things, and also how those beliefs affect their lives, their culture, their social circles, their behavior. So, why do we have beliefs in ghosts and spirits? Why are demons like the buzzword on every paranormal television show? And where does belief fall in terms of how it influences people? I mean, if you're want to put me like on the spot, I believe in ghosts and spirits. I definitely believe that there's survival after death. I believe that it's not just humans. A lot of the investigations, like we've definitely had investigations where there's human spirits, where there's non-human spirits, and the ones that nobody ever complains about, but we'll usually mention, are animal spirits, pets that hang around. Nobody calls a ghost hunter to clear those out, though, because they're usually just happy to have them around still.
You know, I think one of the most curious aspect of your work is how does that occur to a person who is just, a younger person, or they're just going through life, and next thing you know, things are going on that they may or may not understand. Do you have to deal with that a lot? Do you talk with people and say, "Hey, this could have been that or could not have been that," and not, but then at the same time, you don't want people dismissing things that makes them think that they're crazy either, correct?
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and like I said, like the concentration is in psychology of religion. So I've got a fair psychological background, and I think it's important to always assess experiences from every possibility. Like the last thing you want to do is to be sure that you have a demon and what you have is a brain tumor, and you don't get that checked out. Like you want to make sure there's not a physiological cause, there's not a psychological cause. You don't have a gas leak. And that's making you hallucinate. And if you rule out all of the physical world things and the provable stuff, and you still have phenomena that you and other people are witnessing, at which point you have to kind of go, there's some weird stuff out there. What does it mean? And I think the hard part is you never always, it's hard to know what it means. Each person, and this is where belief comes in, has to decide what that means for them. Like, they're seeing an apparition. Does that mean that they are seeing, the actual intelligent spirit of someone who passed on? Or are they seeing a memory sort of like trapped in amber in their space? Does it mean that, the soul survives? Does it mean, what does that affect ideas of heaven or hell or, what any kind of afterlife? It's a lot of deep stuff, and I'm fortunate that I grew up in a family that was weird. Most of them were Catholic, but they were Irish Catholic and just a couple of generations away from immigrating. So they brought a lot of like old world beliefs about second sight and fairies and spirits and family like magical lineage kind of stuff. So on one hand there was you go to church, you pray your rosary, all of that stuff. But also, the world is full of spirits, and human beings have the ability to perceive them.
So so you say you were growing up in a pretty open-minded family. Does that mean that when things started to occur that made you believe that you might be feeling something or seeing something, was that a positive thing? Because I'm sure not everybody grew up in an environment like that.
It was largely a positive thing. So a big part of my personal story is I was born with a heart defect, a very significant heart defect. It's called a ventricular septal defect. And in the early 70s, it was pretty universally fatal. It required open heart surgery, and they did not have a heart-lung machine the right size for someone until I was about 5 years old, and my life expectancy was 5 years old. So I had multiple surgeries. I was in and out of the hospital. There was cardiac arrest. There was a lot going on under the age of 5, which meant that there were a lot of hard conversations about mortality that I was exposed to very, very early on. And I did have a couple of near-death experiences. So I was fortunate that my mom and her mother and their relatives were inclined to have conversations about like, what is this experience like for you? What do you think about this? Like early on, I was taught to ask questions and to talk about what I'm experiencing and think about it. And as I got older, I didn't necessarily think that I was seeing spirits. Like they didn't look any different from other people when I was very tiny. And it was once I started to go to school and find out that other kids did not see some of the stuff that I saw and that was normal in my family, that I was like, okay, so what does this mean really? And again, it was the 70s, so there was like this big push for like Project Blue Book and all the ancient astronaut and UFO stuff. There was a lot of interest in like Duke University's parapsychology department, different sort of like psi things in the military. Like it was very X-Files. And like the way that we've got the sort of like ghost hunter reality boom now, in the 70s, it was more like In Search Of documentaries, like The Monster of Boggy Creek. So it was a perfect time to be someone who was experiencing things and who wanted to learn about them. There were a lot of books out there. There were a lot of shows, and it wasn't. I at least was never shamed about talking about it. Weirdly, that started to change in the 80s and 90s. Like the whole satanic panic thing happened, and people got a little worried about like the line between like psychic experience and occult, in the sense of cult, like what's dark, what's demonic, what's satanic, what's safe. And honestly, that just spurred me onto studying it more, so that I could define those lines and go, okay, well, occult, the word occult just means hidden, just means information that's usually like kept secret from certain people, because it's not something that like they expect everybody to understand. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's satanic or ritual abuse or anything like that. Pretty much any kind of mysterious stuff is occult. But what does that mean really, and how does that impact societal beliefs, especially at the time when you've got like the Lorraine and Ed Warren kind of like traveling the country and going on about Ouija boards and tarot cards, and taking like this haunted Annabelle doll, which is a Raggedy Ann doll of all things, and
which a lot of people don't know what that is. So.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's an age check, isn't it?
Yeah,
big time.
Most certainly is.
Yeah.
So
yep.
If not, just go Google it, I guess. Hopefully it'll pop up.
I mean, I presume we're all about the same age, because I'm nearly 50.
Well,
only 29. Only 29 here.
Yeah. You're definitely the youngest one in this group, trust me. But that's interesting, that you were fortunate enough to to use your words, to grow up in a family like that. Are you encountering a lot of folks reaching out for help because of the exact opposite? I mean, because I noticed in your website that there's some classes and things that you can assist folks going through similar type of a circumstance that you were.
Yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily have the same luxury of growing up in a family that's accepting of things, or encourages them to accept them themselves. And it's in two different directions. Like you have folks who are like materialist atheists, like nothing is real, and therefore it's all in your head. And that creates a fair amount of stress for folks who are having experiences, who are like, am I crazy? Like, do I need to be medicated? What's going on? And then there are different like religious groups have different attitudes on whether or not it's okay to both have these abilities or to study them, and it kind of varies from group to group. And if you are in a much more like extreme sort of like faith-based family, sometimes it's seen as more the work of the devil than just a natural human experience. So a lot of people come out pretty complicated. And add to that the fact like the internet is just this source of endless bad information. Like it's like the best and worst thing that ever happened to us. Like there's all this fantastic stuff we have at our fingertips, and also any Tom, Dick, and Harry can just put something up there, and if you don't know better, it looks like it's right. And in the paranormal, you see a lot of that. Oh God, and not just the paranormal, like witchcraft. There's on TikTok, there is a small community called Witch Talk, which is a bunch of mostly like younger kids and 20-year-olds who at this point are like, books are bad and we're not going to study anything, and they just sort of like tell everybody what magic really is, and it's so bad. Like so bad.
Wow.
So here's my question with that. So at least I remember, the old witch with their brew, books and all this other stuff. What happens when the battery dies in their phone? I guess they can't flick through and find what the next magic potion to go in the kettle is,
Especially if it happens halfway through, you know what I mean? Oh man. Yeah.
Hey, Michelle, I got to ask you, and it kind of goes back to your near-death experiences, because I've heard a lot of different people have different experiences. And I didn't know if you want to elaborate on that at all, but I know, a lot of people talk about, hey, either them going through a tunnel of light, them hovering over themselves, kind of seeing doctors in the operating room or whatever situation is going on. Did you have any type of that sensation during your experiences?
Mm. So the near-death experience that I remember most clearly, because when I asked my mom whether or not I died on the operating table, she was like, "Which time, honey?" Because
Oh,
that's what you want to hear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just say that like I'm a fighter and I'm here. So this one was the final open heart surgery, and at least I think because I'm old enough to like process like people around me and things because I had two open heart surgeries, one at 6 months. I don't expect to remember a lot from that one. Um, so one of the open heart surgeries, uh, they're prepping me, they're wheeling me in. There's like this old janitor who like asks about, what's going on, what's the little kid going in for, and the nurse or my mom who's there tells them, and he like kind of makes like the little sign of the cross and like says he'll pray for me and says, "Don't worry, child, Jesus is with you. Jesus is with you." And at the time, I'm like, I'm not sure what a Jesus is. So I'm like, I go in going, what's Jesus? Okay. And, surgery stuff happens. And there's a point in the operation where I become aware of the room around me. And I'm not seeing through my eyes or hearing through my ears. I'm like, I'm above. And it is very, very classic, like kind of 10 feet above and beyond, and sort of like this weird perspective that isn't your eyes have a direction, and this was more like a sort of 360 sense of this space. So I had a sense of the folks kind of leaning over this form that I had very little connection to. I didn't feel scared or much of anything really. I just sort of felt floaty. Um, there was there was sort of a sense of a light, but at first, literally, and this is a hilarious part of my near-death experience, it was literally the light hanging over me, like this big like steel surgical light. So like that's what I was focusing on first, and then I moved past it, and then there was a sense of something past that room, and further than the room, and it was a different type of light. It was gold, is the best color I have for it, like sunlight. Uh, just as the sun's going down, like that slanting gold with just a little hint of red to it, like that rich sunset color. And there was a sense of a presence and intelligence, and I felt very comfortable. There was no words, there was no communication like that. There was just a sense of being kind of like this full body hug
Hmm.
and peace.
And what age were you at that point?
Under 5.
Okay.
Like the landmark that I have is the final surgery happened when I was 4.5. A couple of weeks after Star Wars, the very first one came out, because that was
Yeah.
sort of like my last hurrah. Was I went to see Star Wars with my
Yeah.
uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's an amazing story. That's unbelievable. And I'm glad you're here because now you've brought so much information and joy to my family when it comes to the TV stuff. And I want to kind of get into transition to the media personality that you are. And whenever you bring your personality to a show, I think it legitimizes it for me anyway, because a lot of what you're saying is based on you could tell you're very well read, and it's just it makes a lot of sense the way you present it. So what do you think this turn into paranormal, because it got big and it stayed
Mm-hmm.
very popular for a long time? I mean, we're over a decade now where it's really have really hit the airwaves. What do you think? What do you attribute to that? Is it just because it's just good entertainment?
I mean, there's a couple of different aspects to it. I mean, just on like a dollars and cents sort of level, like reality TV in general is cheaper to produce because you don't have like actors guilds or screenwriters guilds. So that's definitely a part of it, because the economy's moved into some very weird spaces. But more than that, I think because our world is really uncertain and things are changing so rapidly around us and there's so much unrest, one of the biggest things that I wrestle with is what's out there. Like what do I believe? What should I believe? What is waiting for me? And is there any possible way of having proof? Because we live in such an uncertain time. Like that search for proof is something that I think really appeals to people. And then also, I think it would be disingenuous to say that Paranormal TV has nothing at all to do with horror.
Mm.
There's a lot of horror tropes in it. So even though it's reality TV, and they're real people in real situations, there's a lot of people who get a thrill for kind of like living vicariously through these scary situations. So I think it's a lot of different factors. One is just searching for meaning in a world that is increasingly confusing, and also just the fun of exploring the unknown.
Yeah. Some of the locations that you're able to go to are unbelievable as well. We have one question from Kimmy Ann on the chat board, and she asks, what is your favorite show that you've appeared on?
So far, for me, it's been Portals to Hell because of working with Jack and Katrina. The thing about Jack Osborne is he's no stranger to how television works, and he's got a lot of weight to throw around, which means that he takes care of his people. I am very particular when I do work as a psychic. I've got like really hard rules for not being exposed to anything, and for some people they're kind of weird. I like to like not know where I'm going. If possible, if they fly me out, put me up in a hotel that's not even like in the same city, blindfold me from the time that I'm at the hotel and driven out to the place, because for me, each experience is an experiment. It's a way of testing how these abilities work. And with the blindfold and ruling out as much front loading as possible, that lets me rule out like the fact that I might be able to like see a picture on the wall and go, oh, it's a lady in white, and just sort of like project that onto the space. And Jack is 100% behind and supportive of my process and why I do what I do. So being supported and understood like that. And Katrina is another person from Paranormal State. So like, we've been in the trenches together, and we know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. I really enjoy that show as well. What about your favorite location? What's the coolest location that you've ever been to? Not necessarily what you, it could be just a personal, I always wanted to see that place kind of thing.
Oh, there's so many different places. I mean, there's a place that I would love to see, but it doesn't exist anymore, which when I was reading as a teenager, Harry Price's work on the Borley Rectory out in Britain, but it's burned down since. So it was like this big haunt, and he spent like years and years investigating it. And that would have been on my bucket list, but again, it doesn't exist. I've been to so many really cool places. I still haven't been to the Winchester Mystery House, which is, just sort of like a fun thing that I'd like to explore from an architectural standpoint. Haven't been to the Villisca Axe Murder House. Weirdly, also haven't been to Waverly yet either. I don't think that I could reliably do Waverly Hills on a television show because I've heard so much about it from other people, but I haven't been there. And as an Ohio person, Franklin Castle in Cleveland.
Franklin Castle, yeah. I've seen a couple shows that have been there recently. I think Katrina and I don't know, was it Jack? They made it there, didn't they? Yeah.
I think it was Katrina with Jack or Katrina with Nick Groff. I forget which of the shows it was. And of course, because I'm a local, they couldn't bring me on as a psychic because I know a bunch about that one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the irony. Like if I know about the location ahead of time, and it's always dodgy to like try to find out because they can't tell me where I'm going. I don't want to know, but they're like, so could you give us a list of the places that you know too much about so that we know not to call you in as a psychic for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're flying into Louisville, Kentucky, I mean, you pretty much know where you're going. You're going to go
unless
to
I was working for Paranormal State, because that was always private residences, which was always a surprise. Like it was always you didn't know where you were going for anything. It was somebody's house in almost all cases.
Yeah.
So Michelle, I got to ask, have you ever been anywhere and kind of had that sense or that presence of something? So I'll give you an example. The Gettysburg battlefield, people know all about that. But for me, you know, going a little round top and kind of standing there, there's just, you feel something there unlike anywhere else really on that battlefield. I don't know if you've kind of had that same sense other places, just, you know, the place kind of rolling, but you're like, wow, there's something going on here.
There are several places that have like a distinct feel to them that is like no other place. The French Quarter in New Orleans, like the whole dang thing is haunted, and has like a lot going on for me. And also another one that really rocked my socks was the Lake Shawnee amusement park. There's this burial ground near there, and that was like nothing I've ever experienced. It's not
that's in
like
West Virginia, right?
recent. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not recent Native American tribes. Like it's prehistoric, like Paleolithic level sort of stuff, and that was really something else. And that I want to go back. Like that's a place I want to go back, not on a show, so that I have time to just sort of be there on my own terms and spend as much time as I want to kind of acclimate to the space.
I know you open yourself up so that you can kind of get a sense of what's going on to help, you know, whoever's investigating or to do research or whatever. But have you ever walked into a place and just thought to yourself, man, this place is creeping me out, and I can't believe that somebody lives here? You know what I mean? So how it's got to affect them.
I've almost noped out of a couple of things with Paranormal State. There was
Count me
one
out kind
where
of
like
thing.
I so this was in Mason, Ohio.
Okay.
So close to your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
It was a private residence. So I'm blindfolded and I'm going through the main residence, and like it felt off and wrong. And some of it definitely felt like, you know, whoever lived here was just having a very rough time of it. Like there was a lot of tragedy, a lot of bad stuff. And then there were some sections that like, I'm pretty sure that's human piss that I'm smelling in this room. That can't be normal. So lots going on there. And then Ryan leads me outside of the main part of the building and starts leading me to somewhere else. And I just get this sense of like, I don't really want to go wherever we're going. And, you know, it's my job to go in like, you know, psychically naked, like, you know, all the shields down, open as much as possible. And, you know, he gives me the options like, do you want to stop? And I think about it and I'm like, well, I kind of do, but I'm also really curious. Like at this point, I want to know what's creeping me out. So we walk forward and we go into another building, and I end up standing on the spot where the woman who had originally contacted us about this haunting had hung herself 3 weeks before in her garage out of just desperation for what was going on. And that was a punch in the gut on like so many levels. Like it really stuck with me. It was a lot. Like and it messed with all of us because she had reached out to us. And you know, when you're on the road and you're filming episodes and stuff, trying to keep up on emails, trying to schedule stuff, like it was just nigh impossible. And she slipped through the cracks and ended her life. It was her sister that we came out for, and that whole thing was a big mess. But yeah, there was definitely a like a gut clenching, like I don't really want to walk into this.
Yeah.
And I stood there anyway, and just sort of took it. And it was a lot. Like there was a lot, especially because it was so recent.
You know, that brings me to. Go ahead, buddy.
Sorry, Mark. I was just going to ask, what were they kind of saying? What was the family feeling, or why reach out to you guys? What was kind of.
So that situation was really complicated, and it's actually one of the reasons I say that like belief and interpretation are kind of important about like what we do with phenomena that's happening. A good portion of the family were Pentecostal and very fundamentalist with that, and so the fact that there was anything happening in the house, their worldview, their belief system meant that it all had to be demons. Period. Like there was no option for it to be ghosts or whatever. There were also abuse going on in the family, and so that was making things more complicated. And what the sisters were experiencing and their children were experiencing, and where like the mother was taking it and where other family members were taking it. Like they kind of couldn't agree on what was going on beyond the fact that everybody was suffering.
Now, that obviously had to have affected you, like you said. And I remember one show that you were working on, and you made a point that really resonated with me from the whole show. I mean, it was about about Nostradamus and all these predictions and those quatrains and all those things that he was seeing. And you made a point that I hadn't, most people probably don't think about. You said, I can't imagine what he must have felt seeing all these tragedies and all these things and kind of living those, knowing that these things were going to happen. How do you deal with that not to get too personal, but how do you do that on a personal level? Is it because a lot of things, like you said, you can't just knock off to a psychological, it's emotional too.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Well, on Paranormal State, we actually had a psychologist who worked with us on a lot of the episodes. So the suicide one messed with me enough that I was like, "Hey, buddy, I'm going to sit down and talk with you for a little while because like this has that's a lot." And it depends on the sort of stuff that we're talking about. When it's spirits of the dead, things that linger in places. A place like Gettysburg, where it's not just intelligent spirits, but like the kind of the stain of what happened there, and like you can feel it just kind of playing over and over again. When there's a distance of time, it's easier to have your own emotional distance, like you're almost like watching it. But there are instances where it becomes very personal. The suicide one was especially hard because she was somebody who was close to my age, grew up in the same state, like there was a lot that we had in common. There were a lot of things that we had that were different, but sort of like the feel of her mind was hard to separate from my own, which is why I ended up talking to the psychologist, because it wasn't that the ghost followed me around. It was what she went through haunted me, like on an emotional level. Some of it just is a matter of being really clear of, I'm going here and I'm having this experience, and then I am done doing it. And the blindfold helps with that. I put the blindfold on, I'm there, I'm doing the work. I take the blindfold off, I am back to singing silly songs to my cat. Just doing whatever it is that like keeps me, focused in my skin and in my life. The hardest stuff, my grandmother had dreams that came true, and that messed with her head. I learned some really good things from her because of it. When she was little, she had, I think the one that like really screwed her up the most was she dreamt about the death of a family friend, and it was graphic and brutal. And I think she was like 8 or 9, and it came true. And she became a little obsessed for a while with, could I have stopped it? Was I given this as a sign to stop it? And every person that I've interacted with who's had some sort of future vision like that, from somebody's car accident to like a big there's an earthquake, there's that sort of internal torture of like, well, why did I get this sign if not to change the event? And the Nostradamus show like really brought the question into bear of like, do you see it to bear witness? Do you see it maybe to prepare other people to deal with it? Because some of the stuff you can't reasonably change. On that vein, to get it personal, the most personally impactful one that I had, I occasionally have things that like dreams and stuff that come true. There was one when I was in 7th grade, and it was the Space Shuttle Challenger blowing up, and I dreamed it the night before. And I didn't think much of anything of it, went to school. We didn't have class. We were in the study hall when everything went down. And I about like just shit myself because the announcement comes over and I'm like, because I'm in 7th grade and I'm like, oh, suddenly like could I have like called the U.S. government and said, hey, I dreamed about this thing blowing up? Like not like it would have happened, but I went home and I was in a tizzy over it. And the first thing that my grandmother told me that was useful was anybody can be psychic after the fact. She's like, if you had told me at breakfast this morning, it would carry more weight. So, like, in future, if you have dreams, write it down, record it some way. And that way you can better judge if something is a dream that's going to come true, or if it's just, you ate oatmeal too late at night, or, whatever. And then the second one was that what could you have done anyway?
Yeah.
Like realistically, and yeah, you are witnessing this trauma. It's stuff that's happening in your head. So even if it's not your emotions, you feel them. And that takes a certain amount of intestinal fortitude. It's also why not everybody is comfortable with these abilities. And a lot of people really try, like, have one bad experience and shut them down.
Can you shut them down?
Not neatly, and never completely. So I work with a lot of people who fit that profile of, like, they had a bad experience, or someone told them that it was a bad experience, and they did their best to shut everything down in their head. And what that does is, when you suppress anything, when you repress anything, you just stick it in the back. Basically, you shove it in your brain's attic. It doesn't mean that it's gone. It just means that you're not looking at it anymore. And it's probably going to come out in a way that you can't control, and in a way that is inconvenient, like at the worst possible time. So rejecting it and repressing it is not a solution. Like, finding a way to set those boundaries, like I was describing. I put the blindfold on, I'm doing the psychic thing, I take it off. Now I have a cue of, I'm back to just, my regular stuff. At least for me, I haven't found that it's really possible to turn it all the way off, but it is possible to kind of, like, tune the dial so that, like, if it's really, really loud, you can kind of, like, turn it down so you can concentrate on something else.
Okay.
So, Michelle, I got to ask, I think probably everyone's had the old deja vu. Hey, I've been here before in a past dream, or however you want to look at it. Do you see that? Do a lot of people have that? And that's just a kind of fluke thing? Is that leaning towards the psychic thing? What's your take on that?
I think there's a couple of different things that can be going on for deja vu. The simple, like, psychological explanation for deja vu is, like, our brains are wired for pattern recognition. So sometimes something will remind us of something that we've already done before, something that we've already seen before. So it's so close that it feels like, oh, this is exactly the same thing. So for some instances of deja vu, it's psychological. There's no paranormal thing going on. And then there are those instances of deja vu where you go a place and you're like, I have literally never been here, but I know what's going to be right around that street. Like, I know what's going to be here. And I've got a couple of different theories on that. I've met several people who believe that some of their deja vu in that case came from past lives, that they were remembering having lived in that place before. And in a few other instances, it seemed they were connected to someone. Like, there was almost like a mental telepathy that was going on. Somebody that either that they knew that lived in that area, or someone that they never met and they had some sort of synergy with. And almost like they dream walked with them and, like, saw the place through their eyes and had these other person's memories. And I don't think that there's an easy answer. To me, there's a lot of interconnectedness with the way human minds work. Most of that happens on an unconscious level. And I think that we're a lot more connected than we realize, and we pass a lot more information around than we realize. And sometimes it's literally maybe somebody else's memories.
I have one question from one of the ladies on the chat board, and they said, or asking, is Europe more haunted than America?
I would say, like, Europe has older buildings at this point, and probably a little bit more history that we can research to verify experiences.
Yeah.
And I don't think that one is more haunted than the other, but one is a little bit easier to if you see like, some strange lady with a long dress and long black hair walking back and forth in a certain area, in Europe, you've got enough history and enough books that you can research and go, oh, that's Lady Jane Grey. And, she lost her head over this thing. Like, it's
Yeah.
easier. The United States is this enormous piece of land, so many different things going on, and we don't have a written historical record for most of what happened here.
Do you have like big personalities like yourself? They have to have some kind of a story from, I don't know, a crazed groupie or someone, and I can imagine in the genre of the paranormal that it does not escape that phenomena. What do you got any good stories about that?
Oh, I've got one that's not work safe.
Okay. All right. What's the best one that you have that is network safe?
Like the most the most over the top like weird thing was this person who was like, I'm a big fan of your work and of your writing, and I'm a chaos magician, and I do this art and this watercolor, and I made this thing for you, and it's a sigil, and there's all this stuff in it, and he hands it off to me, and before he has like as he hands it to me, as I'm taking this, he's like, and I mix my in with the paint to supercharge it. And I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh man. Gosh.
Cool.
Yeah.
Whatever floats your boat, man. But not on just keep that to yourself, buddy.
So you didn't take it. You said no thank you?
It was already in my hands. I set it down. I was like, oh well, that's
now you gotta go wash your hands.
Yeah, I'm just like, oh, so that's nice.
Oh my gosh.
Sanitizer, please.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the most like over the top. And kind of like funny in a like, I'm not in the moment anymore, but like, dude, really? What were you thinking?
Oh man. So now you have the website and it has all your information on there, but you also have a Patreon page as well too. Would you like to talk about that? It's patreon.com/haunted.
Yeah. So when everything, I had the Patreon to like support stuff with books and writing, and I didn't do a whole lot with it beyond like, send people books here and there. But then everything happened with the lockdown and last year, and so many things moved to being online. I picked up this house in Oberlin to be like my physical retreat center, the place where I would teach classes in person. And obviously that stopped being a thing. So we moved everything to online, and the Patreon turned into like pretty much where all the classes and all the teaching and all the psychic development stuff happens. And it's turned into this really rewarding community of, I don't know, a couple hundred people who are all just really supportive of one another. Everybody's at different stages of their journey. Some people believe stuff, some people don't believe, and they're just curious. And it all revolves around just trying to figure out like, what is this stuff? And I do like patron chats every week, and a class every month, and then have like hours and hours and hours of video that people get access to, and backstage stuff, and like, if I've flown out and I'm allowed to talk about stuff on television shows, I can be like, okay, guys, I can't tell you where I was at, but holy cow, this thing that happened.
Yeah.
Check this out.
Yeah.
Do you get stopped in airports a lot?
A little bit less recently, and I think the blindfold has a lot to do with that. When I was on Paranormal State, Paranormal State had like 3.5 million viewers or something at one point. Like it was
wow.
Off the charts for like not anything I had expected. But yeah, like I would get stopped at the grocery store. We went out to like a Chinese buffet at one point, and I had tweeted that I was like, I'm going over to Yellowtail with some friends, and somebody from like Akron showed up with a stack of my books for me to sign at the Chinese buffet, like you do.
Yeah.
All right.
Has anybody ever asked you to go to a party with them to kind of read someone's mind across the room or anything like that?
Less so that. I mean, back in the days when I was touring with metal bands, I got invited to all sorts of interesting parties.
Yeah.
One of which ended with me with so this is just fun. There was a band called London After Midnight, old goth band, and we were at a convention in Chicago at the Chicago O'Hare Hilton, I think. And this tiny little guy who I had been working with remotely, he was based out of LA, and this was back when I was like publishing Shadow Dance and a bunch of like my old gothic literary stuff. We met. He tried to introduce me to something called Jägermeister. I'm actually allergic to alcohol, so I'm the one sober person at a party full of goth and metalheads. And this tiny little guy who was probably 100 pounds, soaking wet with rolls of quarters in his pocket, like had apparently never really had the Jägermeister before, and is just like, "Hey, it's really, you're about taller than I," and just starts to go backwards into this glass table behind him. Scoop him up, and I'm 6'1", I'm big, strapping, and just chuck him over my shoulder, going, "So Jeremy is passed out. Where's his room?" Because I think he needs to go back to his room. So I'm just, so my party antics is more taking care of the folks who have had a little bit too much to drink, because I can't, and carrying passed out bassists to their hotel room. I believe that his one of his bandmates told him, he woke up like we had taken some of his costume off and stuff so he didn't throw up on it, turned him on his side and everything. And I guess there's some sort of like, "Oh, you don't remember? Like, you don't remember what happened?" So Jeremy, if you're out anything, there, I just tucked you into bed, honey. It was okay.
Oh man.
There's got to be some good stories, man.
God, yeah.
There are some stories, yeah. Lord, yeah.
Oh boy.
I bet.
Now, how long did you do that?
Oh, let me see. The metal band and the goth band, that was college, and then we had like a reunion tour in 2002. We played with and opened for like Typo Negative, Nightwish. I almost toured with like pretty much a whole bunch of Babylonian Tiles. It was fun. It was always weird being like the band full of people who didn't drink, because like the guitarist was AA, and I'm actively alert to it. So like we'd get up there, we'd rock out, and we just kind of like hand off our drink tickets to everybody else.
Yeah. Well, your website is full of great stuff. I see that you do still make some music. I don't know how recent those songs were, but I was checking those out. That was awesome. You got all the books, over 20, I believe, correct?
I've lost count of how many books. I think it's closing on 30, but I don't know. It depends on if you count some of the stuff like from the early underground presses in the 90s.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on there, and there's classes that they can sign up. They can sign up for the Patreon page. It was a pleasure having you on. And like I said, we're big fans. And if anything ever comes up and you want to push something out like a new book, please come back. We really appreciate it.
No, it's a lovely conversation. Thank you so much.
So, yeah. Well, don't hang up. We're just going to close out, and we'll get right back to you. All right. Thanks again, Michelle.
All right.
Thanks, Michelle.
Man, that was fun, Rick.
Dude, awesome. I can only imagine some of the stories and everything like that, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Phenomenal show.
And it's too bad we're kind of running out of time, because there's several other things. Maybe we'll ask her to come back, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that folks are going to say, "Why didn't you ask this?" But hey guys, again, wherever you're consuming this podcast at, and make sure you check out Michelle's website, but make sure you go to warhog.com for all the updates and all the things that are going on with Duco and the benefits. Check all that out. Make sure you go to kelleydefense.com. And if you're listening on the audio side of the house, go ahead and react with the show. Give us a rating. Help us bump up that algorithm. But great show today, Rick. It was a lot of fun, and let's do it again.
Yeah, buddy. And I got to say one more just big holler to the listeners, man. So appreciate it, guys, because again, we cranked up to the top 3%. So couldn't be done without you guys' support and your time and listening. So thank you guys for that one.
Yep. Top 3% global popularity. So
yeah, buddy.
All right, pal. Be safe, buddy. Always good seeing you, brother.
You too, Mark. Take care.
All right, pal.